Hello and welcome to my upper school students to this lesson where we are going to learn a bit about the rehearsal process. Now I say upper school because this topic is covered in both the CSEC and the CAPE Theatre Arts Performing Arts syllabi in almost identical ways, so we can both really share this lesson. And of course, if you are in Form 6 and you would have done theatre arts at Form 5 level, then this is sort of a recap for you, as well as going into a little bit more depth in some of the topics. So at Form 5 level, the syllabus calls it the production process, and at Form 6, the syllabus calls it the rehearsal process, but it's more or less the same things. So I'm going to skip over the syllabus objectives. If you are using the CAPE syllabus, you can just go to page 162 and you'll see all these things, but I'm going to head straight into the lesson. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is, of course, pre-rehearsal, because we're basically going in chronological order of how it goes when you are doing a production. So when we're talking about pre-rehearsal, I'm sure you can imagine we're talking about the things that we do before the performers go into practice mode in order to prepare for the production ahead. So first of all, the director and designers, maybe even before they cast anyone, they will be reading and analyzing the script. Every creative member's first act, their first responsibility, their first move should be to read, analyze, and understand the script, so they'll get their preliminary ideas about what their concept is and what vision they have, the characters, the themes, the look, the feel of the production. They'll also have pre-rehearsal meetings among the production team where they talk about pre-rehearsal things. They'll set deadlines, they'll clarify information, and of course prepare to begin the production. And then once the production begins, they're going to start having production meetings which happen very regularly up until showtime. So of course, if you have a shorter production period, you're going to have fewer production meetings, but you might have them more often. But if you have a longer production period, you might have production meetings probably every week or a few times a week. So after pre-rehearsal, we are going to talk about auditions and casting, one of the most nerve-wracking parts of a production process. So casting is the name of the process where you select the people who are going to perform in your show, and the people who are going to take up certain roles on that performing team. And people always ask the question, how do you get cast in a show? How do you get to be a part of theater? How do you get to be in these different productions? And in most cases, a production company will throw out an open casting call, which is basically where they invite the general public to come and audition for different roles in a production to be mounted. And of course, we should know that auditions are basically like interviews, but for performers. So there are different type of interviews basically. So the different types of auditions that you might see very commonly, there's a cold read, which is where the auditioning people, the potential cast, are asked to read aloud, of course, and sort of act out from the script without having any prior preparation, without having read it before. So they're going into it cold, they haven't warmed up into it. There might also be a workshop rehearsal, which is very common in dance, which is where you would give the auditioning people exercises or engage them in a workshop, a series of exercises, and judge how they perform in that group setting, rather than looking at them individually. And as I said, that's very common with dance, where you will be taught a particular piece of choreography. The entire group will be taught the same choreography, and then you might, the casting director or the director or whoever, the choreographer, might look at them and decide who performs the best or who performs the most to their liking. Otherwise, there may be auditions where you're actually asked to prepare something. So you may get a production and they want to know if you're a triple threat. They might ask you to prepare all of the above and you come and perform it in the audition. Now, usually the director and choreographer will select or you might have a casting director. If you have a really big production team, it might be somebody separate, and they will select based on their vision. So even though you may be the most skilled person in an audition, if you don't fit the part that the casting people have envisioned in their head, you just may not get picked, and that's part of the reality of being in the business. So here you see an example of an actual casting call, an open casting call, and you see they'll tell you a bit about the project, and they'll tell you the characters who are meant to be read for. So you get a breakdown of a little description of the characters, so you know if you are not a male in your mid-30s or late 40s of any ethnicity, then you should not be auditioning for the corporal. And likewise, if you are not a male in your mid-20s to early 30s of any ethnicity, then you shouldn't apply for cadet, audition for cadet as well. So it will give you more or less a summary of what the project is like, and you'll more than likely have to send in some preliminary things like a photo of yourself, or maybe a preliminary video, especially now that it's COVID, and then you can go in to audition if you are called. So on with auditions and casting, sometimes if you have a lot of really strong performers and you just want to make sure you streamline them more, you're going to have callbacks, which is where you're basically called back to audition again, or audition in a different way for the same production. And bigger productions a lot of times have several rounds of callbacks, and of course the performers who are selected from the final round will be the people who make up the final and official cast for the production. So now that the cast is selected, you might want to head into rehearsals. Well, not might, you should head into rehearsals. And we are going to cover some of the different types of rehearsals that we're expected to know in this syllabus. So first and foremost, there are line rehearsals, otherwise known as read-throughs, which is, as you can imagine, where you read aloud and try to give a little bit of character to the lines as well in a script. And of course, sometimes this might be a cold read as well. But this is a rehearsal where you're not working on blocking, you're not working on movement just yet, but really getting a feel of the script, getting a feel of the storyline, the plot, the characters, and the happenings, and all those things. Then you'll probably move into blocking rehearsals, which makes up the bulk of the rehearsals for a theater production. And this is, of course, we know what blocking is. This is where we start looking at movements, at body positioning, at body language, at your walk, the way you interpret your character, where your characters are going to move in particular scenes, entrances, exits, everything to do with movement is where you really break down the play in the blocking rehearsals. And the stage manager, of course, takes note of all of the blocking, so they have to be there in the rehearsal and be prepared to pay attention and take notes at all times. And then the actors now are expected to learn their lines, not in rehearsal, but they're expected to do their homework and look at their character when they go home, look at their script and learn the lines until it is time to be off book or off script, which is where, of course, you're expected that you don't come onto the rehearsal stage with your script in your hand anymore, because you have it all in your head. You might want to get a prompt every now and again. If you don't remember a line, the stage manager will give you a prompt because he or she will be following in their script. But when you're off book, it's expected that by then all of the performers know their lines pretty well. So moving on now, once you have blocking established, and this is still in rehearsal mode, of course, the scenes should be preset, which is basically where they are set beforehand in the rehearsal space. You have the set pieces, or at least the substitute set pieces as it might be for the while, the props and things like that in the space, in the place before the actors come in. So most times when you have the stage crew in your rehearsal, they will be responsible for presetting a scene, or sometimes the actors will have to do it as well. So in order to ensure that the set pieces are placed in the right place, when you take them off and put them back on, they're exactly as they were the last time you rehearsed it, you might want to spike the floor or spike the set. This should not be confused with strike the set. We all know that to strike the set is to take it down. We'll look at that a little bit further as we're going in chronological order. But if you look over to your right hand side, you'll see these little obscure pieces of tape are actually what we call spikes, and that is how you ensure that the set pieces are being placed in the right space. And we're going to look at a video in the next slide actually of how to properly spike a particular piece of set. So if you have rehearsals in a space that's different to your actual performance space, the stage manager will also want to measure out the actual size of the space. So hopefully your rehearsal space is a bit bigger or allows you enough room so that you get a feel of the actual size of the performance space, and your stage manager should outline that for you with tape, and they should also indicate where your center line is. So that is where the stage is split in half, and you kind of have an idea of balance on how to move and how to arrange your blocking mentally. So I have a clip here from a lovely student video. Maybe one day I'll get to do videos like this. A lovely student video that shows you very simply how to spike, not strike, how to spike the set for rehearsals and of course for the actual production as well.
How do you spike in theatre? So today we are going to spike for this block, which has already been placed in the picture. So firstly, you should make two L shapes of tape as seen by Erica.
Like hearts.
Yeah, and now we're going to spike. Okay. So we're going to touch exactly. Okay. So basically, the three important parts you should take note of are that they should be upstage, which means that they should be away from the audience and easy to see when you're moving from backstage, and it should be easy for you to locate and place. So we're going to demo that now. Okay, so for example, if I'm moving this box in the actual play, I would have to be able to see the markings clearly and easily. Okay, so now it's not really complete. Okay, so that is how you should spike in theatre.
Say it together.
Oh.
And
that is how you should spike in theatre.
So moving along with rehearsals now, coming closer and closer to showtime, you're going to have technical rehearsals or tech rehearsals, which of course focus on the technical aspects of a production. These ones are not where you run through scenes, they're not where you run through lines. By this time, all of the performers are expected to know what they're doing, and they move into this space and work on the technical aspects. So tech rehearsals really are not focused on the performance at all, so that they can be really long and tedious, as this is when you'll be running sound, rigging and focusing lights and things like that. Now a dry tech is where you have a technical rehearsal without the performers present. So usually this will be after the lighting and the sound are already programmed, and then the operators will actually just be practicing, doing their own little rehearsal, practicing how to use the equipment and making sure the cues are in order as well. So this might actually be a cue to the cue. However, sometimes you have the performers present for a cue to cue, and as the name suggests, this is where you go from one cue to the next. So you cut out all of the action in between, and you're just going through entrances, exits, light cues, sound cues, all of these things from the top to the bottom of the production. You're not going through lines, you're not going through scenes, you're not going through characterization or choreography. You're only going from one cue to the next. And then finally, the final rehearsals before the actual thing, before showtime, are the dress rehearsals, or what you call a dry run, which is where you perform the show from top to bottom exactly as it should be, with full set, full costume, full lighting, full sound, everything as it should be on the night or the day of the show or shows themselves. So you should actually be able to have people in your audience during a dress rehearsal, and they should get a feel of how the show is actually going to be, with full energy, all out, all the way. So just to look at some typical rehearsal rules, it's very important for us to be respectful of ourselves and the other people in our space, because theater involves quite a lot of cooperation. And when we cooperate with each other, it just makes life easier for everybody. So be on time. If you are late or absent, please let your stage manager know in advance. And you know that you're going to be late before you're late. So don't let them know 10 minutes in advance. So no phones, no eating, no drinking or chewing of gum, unless of course you're drinking water. Wear comfortable clothes, wear workable clothes. Always have a pencil on hand to take notes in your script. Always pay attention to the scene that's being rehearsed. Even if you are not in the scene, you need to know what else is happening in the production. And no side coaching without the permission of the director. So side coaching is something that we all love to do. We all love to give our classmates and our castmates a little bit of advice on what we think they should do better, how they could improve this, how they can improve that. But it can be quite disruptive and disrespectful actually if you are side coaching and pretending to be the director. Always remember, in most cases, there's just one director. So let them do their job, and you might want to consult with them if you have something to suggest. So now we are moving on to talk about the production processes after rehearsals and aside from rehearsals. So some other terms that you should know: a load in or get in is where you move into the space. You move out of the rehearsal space and into the performance space. And we're going to watch a video about this in a second from the lovely guys at Naprima Pool. Once this happens, the technical team will start rigging the lights and also running the sound. Then after the performance is done, encore, everybody takes a bow, they collect their flowers, the curtain closes. You are going to have the get out, which is where you get out of the space. You take everything that you brought into it and you return the space to its original condition. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, during the get out part of this is striking the set, where you take down the set and put it into storage. So here's a little video clip where we're going to see what the load in and get out is like. Just a little sneak peek. So this, on the other hand, now this is this is an unusual circumstance as it was done for artistic impact. Just a little bit of a disclaimer, but this is an example of how you might begin to strike the set in a production. Of course, you're not going to strike the set while the performers are still performing, but I just thought this is a really cool example where Freetown Collective shows you a little bit of the behind the scenes when it comes to the end of a production. And in this case, it's more of a film production. So take note, as you see, you're going to observe that the stage manager is directing the striking of the set, assisted by the stage hands in this situation.
Stand firm and never let your heart be troubled.
Stand firm.
Trouble come and go like Shine on my people.
Shine, shine,
Oi.
shine on.
Hey. Shine
Shine,
on
shine,
my people.
shine on. Shine, shine, shine on.
Shine on my people. Yeah. Yes, Rasta. Hey.
And that is a wrap. The curtain closes, and that's all we have to learn today when it comes to the rehearsal and production processes. So I hope that was really clear and straightforward. If it's not, feel free to comment any of your feedback or your questions down below, and I'll see you in the next session.